Hello and welcome. This is the new session of our online classes. I hope that you managed to stay safe and healthy over the previous period of Easter, whether you celebrated it 2 weeks ago or a week ago or actually recently. So today, in this video lecture, I will not talk about anything new in particular. I will only focus on your midterm. So what you can expect, what you should focus on in the midterm. As you will see in the slides, it's not a big midterm. And as you will see in the slides, we don't know really when this is going to happen and how, but there is a very high probability that it may happen only in June at the beginning of the official examination period, but honestly, we don't know. We simply don't know. So let's wait and see. So without much further ado, let's go to the presentation. So as you can see, this is a presentation entirely about the midterm. And as you can see also in our schedule, after the previous presentation where we talked about adverbials, I did not introduce you to the midterm because we knew back then that there would be no midterm in April. So today's time slot was officially seen as the time slot for the midterm itself. It's not very unlikely, it's definitely unlikely, so it's not happening. So next week's we will talk about simple sentence and complex sentence, and in the last lecture I will tell you something about the oral exam whenever that is going to happen. So when it comes to the news, and I mean the news about the course and education, not the general news, the latest information is that the first examination period that we may theoretically have will be in June. That's all we know, and that's tentative. As you can see here, you can also join us for online practice chat sessions on Thursdays from 4 to 5:30. You got the invite for that. And there are also office chat sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 6 on Tuesdays and from 5:30 to 6:30 on Thursdays. That's actually immediately after the practice chat sessions. So let's move to the real topic of today's lecture, and it's the great battle of our semester. It begins virtually, and we don't know the end date and the final date for it, but we have to be prepared for it nonetheless. So the midterm test. You will going to have a close look at it now, and you will see what it really looks like. And you should really take a good look at it because it's worth 25% of your final grade. If you don't take this test, midterm test, whenever it is going to take place, the maximum score that you can get is actually 75%, which is an 8. So without this, you are aiming for 8 maximum. And be warned that in order to get that 8, you have to score almost perfect scores in the written and the oral exam. So it's really valuable. And although we don't know when and where it will take place, it could happen in multiple classrooms because of social distancing, you have to start preparing for it. So this is what it looks like. This is a sample from 13 years ago, but we didn't change anything in the format itself. We only changed sentences and examples, of course. The reason why we don't change anything, because, well, grammar doesn't change that fast. So, as you can see, there are 8 questions. The first one is about parts of speech. The second one is about phrases headed by those parts of speech. So, of course, in this whole midterm, we focus exclusively on adverb phrases, adjective phrases, and prepositional phrases, plus adverbials, everything that we've done so far. The third exercise is on the order of adjectives in the adjective phrase. The fourth one is actually on changing the nouns with adjectives into verbs plus adjective, adverb, or a PP. The fifth exercise is actually about negative and locative inversion. The sixth one is fundamentally on adverbs. I will emphasize this later on. So it's on adverbs, not adverbials. The adverbials are actually the focus of the seventh and the eighth question. So I will walk you through all of these examples, and we will do the samples that you see here in this slide, but we will not go really through this seventh and the eighth one, which I already mentioned. The reason for this is that the seventh and the eighth exercise are what you actually had in the previous home assignments and practice sessions. So you have to underline adverbials, determine whether they are adjuncts, conjuncts, or disjuncts. If they are adjuncts, conjuncts, or disjuncts, what subtype they are. And you have to, of course, provide the position, only initial, medial, final. So the people upstairs are noisy in the evening. In the evening is an adjunct of time, subtype when, time when, position, final. We did that. You have the key to the exercises from the workbook uploaded to the site of our course. So this has been taken care of, and also many people attended last week's practice sessions where we actually talked about this in details, and there were a lot of clarifications. So I hope that those who did not attend those chat sessions on practice, that the information reached you, that people who attended shared their insights, and that you know what this is about. The last exercise is again on adverbials, but again something that we have already done in practice sessions, and you have the keys to the relevant exercises in your PDFs on the course website. So it's simply about identifying the adverbial and determining its structure. So in the evening, here you write that it's a prepositional phrase. So the seventh and the eighth exercise are entirely focused on adverbials, function and meaning in the seventh one, and form in the eighth exercise. So now, as I mentioned, we will not go through the examples because you have many examples in PDFs from practice classes. So instead, we will talk about all other exercises. And you will be, after this, fully prepared for this midterm. So let's look at the first one. As I mentioned, it's about parts of speech. Of course, here, when we say parts of speech, we focus entirely on adverbs, adjectives, prepositional phrases. There may be some other parts of speech that, find their way into this exercise, but the focus is actually on the ones that we covered in the first 3 units of this course, Gate 2. So he was the last person to hear the news. Last sometimes can be an adverb, but here it's actually in front of a noun, so we treat it as a determiner. If you need a refresher on this, go to page 69 and you will see that it's actually in the group of post determiners, quantifiers, in the same group as next, for example. He finished last. Here it's not attached to a noun, so it's standing on its own. It's doing a function in the sentence. It's not part of a sentence element. It's actually a sentence element. So this one is really an adverb. As I mentioned, this is the other possibility for last. She thinks highly of her teachers. Highly here again seems to have a sentential function. So it's also an adverbial, but we are not here really focused on functions. Functions can only help you identify parts of speech. We are only interested in the form of the word, whether it's an adverb, preposition, adjective. So here, because it ends in ly and we know that there's a corresponding adjective high, this has to be an adverb. I've been feeling under stress lately. Under precedes stress, which is a noun, so under has to be a preposition. It may be many years before the situation improves. Let's hope not. This sounds like a sentence about the pandemic, but it was from 2007. So before is followed by a clause. The situation improves. So before here is actually a conjunction because it introduces a clause. The situation improves. In the next sentence, before is not a conjunction. Before, it doesn't introduce a clause. It introduces just us, the task before us. So this one is a preposition because it is followed by a noun phrase, us. We drove up to Inverness to see my father. So you will make a natural pause here. We drove up to Inverness. So up is like in isolation. It's not connected to Inverness. So it's an adverb. You could also say we drove. We drove up. We drove up to Inverness. So this also functions as an adverbial, but we don't care about that. In case of emergency, take the up escalator. Up here is not in isolation. It's not a sentence element. It's in between the and the noun. So it must be a part of a noun phrase. This probably means that it's not an adverb. On the other hand, what you normally have here would be something like the new escalator, the wonderful escalator, the white escalator. So this is in the same position where you would expect an adjective, and it is really an adjective. You should have told me so before. Before tells you about the time of the verbal activity, so it functions as an adverbial, but it's not so important here. This is just as, you know, an additional piece of information for you to practice. This is an adverb. Adverb which functions as an adverbial. The travel agent recommended the cruise up the Neva. This up is not the same up as in G, because this up is followed by a noun phrase, so it's a preposition. Plus MP, that makes a prepositional phrase. Don't ever give up. Now this up is part of a phrasal verb. This is actually a particle phrasal verb, but what is important is that it's an adverb. So in the midterm in 2007, we tolerated as the answer either adverb or adverb particle of a phrasal verb. Why? How do we know that it's an adverb? You know the test. He gave it up. You don't say he gave up it. So those kinds of particles like up, they are adverb particles when you have to put a pronoun between the verb and the particle. If you put the pronoun after the particle, for example, he looked after her. So he looked after the daughter, he looked after her. That's actually a piece of evidence that that particle after is a prepositional particle. For that, you would write that it's a preposition. And that wraps up the first exercise. You know this, just focus on adverbs, adjectives, prepositions. Occasionally, you may have a determiner or a conjunction. Now, the second exercise is actually what you also did in practice classes. However, here it's separated into 3 subtasks. Each subtask focuses on one of the phrases: adjective phrase, adverb phrase, and prepositional phrase, and you are supposed to analyze the structure and the function of the phrase. Don't forget to circle the heads here and provide the relevant details. So let's take a look. First of all, a convention here. You can notice that heads in the examples are written in bold. When you do this exercise in the midterm, you will most likely be writing it. We are not accredited for online midterms. So make sure that you circle it because it's more difficult to make it bold in writing. So always circle the head. I warned you, if you don't circle the head, we may have to deduce points from you or take away points, because one of the key pieces of information here is the head. So S means structure, F means function. So this is a very interesting book. You're looking for adjective phrases in the first part of this exercise. So the adjective phrase is very interesting. And the structure is adverb plus adjective head, and the function is pre-modification of a noun phrase. The second exercise, B, is about, again, here you always find adjective phrases, but here you will have a bigger one, and we actually do this usually so that the first one is relatively simple, and then the next ones are increasingly more complex. So this adjective phrase here is old enough to get married. So the structure is adverb, enough is treated like a pre-modification. Adjective, this is old, you can circle it, of course, and clause, non-finite clause, to get married. So the structure that we write here is a consequence of the fact that enough is treated as an adverb. If you write adjective plus adverb, we will of course tolerate it, and of course if you write these labels above the words. What is the function? It's a subject complement because it describes the subject. In C, the phrase is delighted that you have made it. The structure is had, delighted, plus a finite clause that you have made it. And the function is, again, subject complement. The last phrase is actually not as complex as this one. It's prettier than her sister. It's adjective had plus pp than her sister. And the function is an object complement because he found her, let's say, prettier. He found her distracted. He found her sad or whatever. So it's an object complement. Then in the second subsection, you do the same kind of analysis for adverb phrases. So adverb phrases here again go in the order of ascending complexity. So the first one is surprisingly well. The head is well, surprisingly, is a pre-modification, and the function here is that it's an adverbial. You don't have to make a distinction between adjunct, disjuncts, and conjuncts here. Just an adverbial is enough, not even obligatory or optional. We only care about the function itself. Soon enough is the adverb phrase in the second one. Here the head is soon enough is pre-modification, so make sure that you circle the right word in these examples with enough. And of course the function is again an adverbial. He spoke too fast for us to take notes. Here you have a complex adverb phrase, too fast to take for us to take notes. The head is fast, preceded by an adverb to and followed by a non-finite clause for us to take notes. It's a non-finite clause because it contains the infinitive form, and notice that the subject exists for us, but it's not in the infinitive form. It's introduced by for, which is a trademark of non-finite clauses, that the subject, if it exists, is never in the nominative case. And the function is again an adverbial. The last subsection of this exercise is about prepositional phrases. And here, as you can see, the number of lines will always correspond to the number of prepositional phrases that you have to find. So in the first one, it's to the flooded region. So the structure is P plus noun phrase, the flooded region, and the function is actually of course, the adverbial. Here you can write that it's obligatory, but it's not so important. As I mentioned in this exercise, it's just enough to write that it is a particular type of a sentence element. In the next one, the prepositional phrase is for certain personal reasons. It's P plus MP again, certain personal reasons. Don't forget to circle the head for. And the function is again an adverbial. This one is optional, and by the way, it's also an adjunct of cause or reason, but we are not interested in that. The last simple, let's say, prepositional example is J, where the prepositional phrase is about the damage we caused. Now, this one is P plus noun phrase. There is a clause, we cause, but this clause modifies the damage. So the damage is a noun phrase with a clause in its post modification, so we treat this as P plus MP. And on top of that, this is not so straightforward because about the damage we cause really modifies the adjective sorry. So it's not a sentence element. This PP is just post modification or complement of the adjective phrase. In the last sentence, there are two PPs. From what I heard is the first one, and in deep trouble is the second one. So from what I heard is P plus a clause, WH clause, finite, and its function is, of course, the adverbial, optional, but you don't have to specify it here. Whereas in deep trouble, is P plus MP, so a typical prepositional phrase, but its function is really interesting. This function is not an adverbial because deep trouble is not a physical place. This is a subject complement. So, by the way, if you have to analyze what the verb is, it's S, the company apostrophe S. That S is actually the subject complement. And with that, we finished the second exercise, which is one of the longest exercises. In the third one, your task is simply to order the adjectives in the correct order within the pre-modifying position of a noun phrase, and you know the drill. It's subjective, then objective, size, shape, age, you know the order. So here the right thing is to say an extravagant because it's subjective, and then long red silk dress. Long is, let's say, size, red is of course color, and silk is the material. Here in B you start with friendly because that's subjective, and then you say large brown because large is size and brown is color, and size, shape, age, color. Here in C, delicious is of course the first one. Chocolate is really a noun, so it goes to the end. It could be material, but think about it, it's actually a noun. So you have delicious, chocolate biscuits, and homemade is a participle, so it comes before chocolate. So delicious homemade chocolate biscuits. The skirt, here the trick is actually to understand that again silk is a noun, so it's a silk skirt, which is tight, and striped is a participle. So again the order is tight, striped, silk skirt. Finally, in this E example, which is maybe a little bit sexist, but it was 13 years ago, so attractive is subjective, you start with that. And then you have size, shape, age, color. So it will be a 30-year-old, sorry, an attractive, tall, 30-year-old blonde woman. And that's the third exercise. The fourth one is the final exercise on this page. And here you actually have to do what we also practiced. You take the nouns with adjectives and you transform them into suitable expressions with adverb phrase, adjective phrase, and the PP. So there has been a drastic fall in the dollar. So instead of a drastic fall in the dollar, you say the dollar has fallen drastically. And here in the instructions, you will have written that you are always supposed to use the adverb phrase or the adjective phrase. You will never use in a particular way unless there is no corresponding adjective or an adverb. So the instructions here were not complete, but I'm telling you, just read the instructions. It will tell you that, for example, here we will not give you a point if you write the dollar has fallen in a drastic manner. which is weird anyway. Why did she give me such a stern look? Why did she look at me so sternly? Again, you can create sternly, so you write not in a stern way. That would be a mistake, although you could say that maybe in real life, but here in this exercise we focus on checking your word formation skills and distinguishing between adverbs, adjective phrases, and PPs. Tom is a good cook, so Tom cooks well. The key here is to shift to an adverb, of course, from the adjective. I gave her fatherly talk. Fatherly can only be an adjective, so this is only a small group of ly words which behave, which look like adverbs but are actually adjectives. And in this instance, you will not say I talk to her fatherly. You will write I talk to her in a fatherly way or a fatherly manner. So this is the only exception when you cannot create a corresponding adverb. You actually then can say in a particular way or manner. The flowers had a fragrant smell. The flowers smelled fragrant. This is a verb of perception, so it would be a really big mistake to say fragrantly. And we finished the first page. On the second page, you have two exercises that you also are familiar with. The first one is the fifth one, where you have negative and locative inversion. So you have to start the sentence with the words in the italics. So I have never met such a man. Never have I met such a man. You should not sign the document on any account. On no account. Pay attention. You cannot start with on any account. You have to have a negative word to have a negative inversion. So on no account should you sign the document. Only when they left did I realize what happened, and seldom has a true word been spoken. We practice this, you know this, so it's a very short and simple exercise. The sixth one is about adverbs. So here, the common mistake that students do is that they are only looking for adverbials. No, you should look for adverbs, only adverbs. And adverbs which can function as adverbials, adjuncts, conjuncts, disjuncts, modifiers, or complements of the preposition. So find adverbs. Some of them may function as adverbials, but you also are supposed to find adverbs that are modifiers or complements of the preposition. And you may have more than one in a single sentence. So understandably is the first one. And here you will write that it's a disjunct, adverbial disjunct. You can only write disjunct. It's implied that it's an adverbial. She has an awfully bad temper. So the adverb here is awfully, and it modifies bad. So it's a modifier of the adjective phrase, not of a noun phrase, because the temper is awfully bad, not awfully temper is bad, you see? He showed us straight to our seats. The adverb is straight and it modifies to our seat, so it modifies a prepositional phrase. Mary works very hard. You have two, very and hard. Very is a pre-modification of the adverb phrase, hard, and hard itself is the adjunct of degree. He's quite a nice man. Quite is the adverb, but here it's actually a modifier of a noun phrase. In F, you have two, yet, which is the conjunct, and never, which is an adjunct. Then you have, in this over 20 people came to the party, the adverb is actually over, and it modifies 20, so it's a modifier of a determiner. It's a very rare function, but we talked about it. And the last one is abroad, which complements the preposition from, so it's a complement of the preposition. And that's it. The seventh and the eighth exercise we already did in Google Meet sessions, and you'll have keys to exactly the same kinds of exercises in your PDFs on the course site. So In the seventh one, you do everything. You determine the type of the adverbial, adjunct. So it's about adverbials, not adverbs, adverbials. Adjunct, conjunct, disjunct, plus subtype and position in the sentence, but initial, medial, final. We don't care about M1, M2, M3 here. So the people upstairs are noisy in the evening. In the evening is an adjunct of time, time, location, or time when, position, final. In the last exercise, you will have to again find adverbials, but not specify their type, adjunct, disjunct, conjunct, and subtype, and position. Here you only focus on the structure. So is it a phrase, is it a clause, what kind of phrase, what kind of a clause? So in the evening is a prepositional phrase. It could be, you will have examples with non-finite clauses, finite clauses, etc. So this joke that you see on the screen, it's supposed to tell you that we don't know what your midterm is going to look like. There are rumors that, attendance will be limited to, maintaining 2 meters of distance among students, 6 feet, as they say in the States. So we don't know, but start preparing for your midterm. Thank you for your time. Stay safe, keep safe. We'll see each other on YouTube.